Welcome to Rebuilding Careers. I'm Bonni Pomush, the CEO of Working Wardrobes, and today I am here with Carolyn Beaver and Richard Ward, members of the Working Wardrobes Legacy Society. This is a group of individuals, including myself, who have made our after-lifetime gifts to Working Wardrobes known now. Welcome, Carolyn and Richard.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good to be here.
I'm so glad that you are. And before we get too far into our conversation, I just want to ask each of you if you will just please share an introduction of yourself and how did you get involved with Working Wardrobes? Richard, do you want to get us started?
Sure. Happy to, Bonnie. So I'm Richard Ward. I'm a certified financial planner. My purpose these days is really to help more people live richer lives. I've been doing this work for well over 30 years, and I tend to work with mature people who understand that financial success isn't the only goal they have in life. Rather, they kind of get that turning that success into a lasting legacy is really the best way for them to live out the second half of their lives to the very fullest. So I try to help them focus on the ways they'll find continued growth and impact, which I kind of believe is the key to living a purpose-driven life. And, once they decide they want that kind of better future, I can provide the financial and philanthropic guidance that really helps them pursue that purpose and live a much richer life. I got first involved with Working Wardrobes about 5 years ago. As it turned out, Working Wardrobes was the 2017 grant partner for Center Club Cares, a program I helped start at Center Club to make a significant grant to organizations in the education and workforce development areas each year. So we got to work together with Working Wardrobes for the year, and I got to meet with Jerry and serve on the board at Center Club with her for a full year. So that was my first introduction, and I've been associated ever since, I think.
What a beautiful introduction in that same arena, in the philanthropic space of creating the communities that we value, that we want to participate in. How about you, Carolyn? A little introduction of yourself and how you got involved with Working Wardrobes?
Sure. So I'm Carolyn Beaver, and I've had a career in accounting and finance, and now I'm currently on the board of 3 public companies and also on the board of Working Wardrobes. I've been on the board for 5 years, and prior to that time, I had donated professional clothing to Working Wardrobes for a number of years, and then after I retired from, I'll call it my full-time position, I was looking for a board opportunity and contacted Bob Hurley, who was previously our board chair, and he suggested getting involved with Working Wardrobes. And so, of course, I met with Jerry, and that was great. And so the next thing I knew, I was on the board, and so I really enjoy the board work and enjoy the opportunity to do something to give back to the community. I think that's really important, and that's something that I've always been involved in different things over the years, and this is one that I'm particularly passionate about.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I know our listeners are going to get to find out more about you, but I just have to say from the offset that you have both such beautiful souls that you want to be contributors to the world in such a broad sense, and to give of yourself is just, in my opinion, it's really sacred that you want to do that with your life. So thank you so much for wanting to do this in partnership with Working Wardrobes. We often talk about our tagline, the power of a paycheck, and you each obviously have careers, and they didn't start where you are now. So I'm very curious, what was your first paycheck? How'd you earn it? And maybe a little bit about what you learned from earning that first paycheck. Carolyn, you want to get us started this time?
Sure. So my first paycheck was working for my dad's business, helping my mom do the accounting, the bookkeeping, while I was in high school. And because of that job, I decided to take accounting at the local junior college while I was in high school, because I wanted to learn more, because my dad was interested in how much did his plants really cost. And in order to take the cost accounting class to kind of learn how to help him figure that out, I needed to take the first 2 basic accounting classes. And ultimately, that's what led me to a career in accounting. So that was my first job. And I think my probably first paycheck was, $45 or something like that. So that was a long time ago.
Wow, it's such a practical example too, that to answer this question, you needed a particular skill set and then you kept building upon that. Did that curiosity factor must have continued to fuel your education?
Yes.
What about you, Richard? How'd you earn your first paycheck and what did you learn doing it?
Yeah, I didn't take quite as direct a route to get where I am today. I think one of my first jobs was a dishwasher in a restaurant where my sister's boyfriend got me, in to get a job there. And it's kind of hard work, messy work, but you learn a number of skills. You learn how to be responsible. You learn how to do the job that's being asked of you, and to get along. I probably earned $26, Carolyn, so maybe it was a year later or two. I'm not sure in that first paycheck, but I think the key was that you learn those skills that are important in any position, and how to keep a job and progress, learn, grow, as you steps up through the years. And one of the important lessons, and I remember my father telling me this when I was young, particularly with the tasks and chores that he had me do with him that were kind of distasteful, not very enjoyable type things. And he used to say, well, it's really important to learn the things that you don't want to do with the rest of your life. So, get an education and go on and do something, important. And I think, from that first job, I learned that, I probably ought to move along in life and career at some point. So that's kind of where I went with that.
Oh my goodness. I so relate to that, Richard, because oftentimes if there's any sort of task that needs to be done in the same manner multiple times, I am not the person that you want to do it, because I will keep inventing new ways to do it, but I would be the worst sort of assembly line function. So I can understand that lesson very well. That we need to learn also what we don't want to do or what we're not good at before we can really contribute our strengths. It's interesting how both of those experiences shaped or sort of informed your careers in different ways. I'm curious, have you also, at Working Wardrobes, we take this whole notion of coaching and helping guide people through a transition to gain skills, to build their confidence, to empower people to really own what they have as gifts and talents and strengths to give, and then help them launch them in a career. That takes an investment, right? It's an interpersonal relationship, and it's one person investing in another person. Have you had an experience like that? If you had, would you share it with us? How did you experience someone investing in you in your career, and maybe what did they do that made a difference? Richard, have you had that experience?
Yeah, as I think about that question, I've probably been working too long to remember some of the early examples that I could relate, way back when. But I can relate an example just from 10 years ago. I've been in this financial services industry for a long, long time. And I was growing a little dissatisfied with it in some ways. And happened to meet the woman that I call a friend and colleague and partner now, Susan Dixon, who I work for. And the reason I think of her in that role so well is that she was one of the few people that really was able to listen to me and hear what I had to say, what my concerns were, my issues, to really approach me with that kind of empathetic point of view and wanting to understand and find out what was important to me and what was I didn't like and what maybe that I would like. And ultimately, she created the right environment and provided the right support for me to make a change in my business to come to work with her. This was about 10 years ago, and providing that real platform, that real support so that I could really kind of grow and thrive in the position I'm in today. And it just has been the most important mentor role that I can think of for years and years, and I value that very, very greatly.
What a lesson too about really listening and really being not like projecting on what you think the person needs, but really hearing you and letting you emerge and then guiding. That's really, go Susan. What about you, Carolyn? Have you experienced that kind of investment?
I have, and certainly that was a great example that you shared, Richard. And um, in my career, which since it started in public accounting, I really worked for a number of great people that provided a lot of help in my career. And one in particular that I'll mention is Jim Glover, who I worked for very early in my career at KPMG. And I remember that he made the point that basically my job wasn't done just because I wasn't on the schedule for that particular client anymore. If the report hadn't been issued, it was still my responsibility to come in the office, whenever, to get it done. And that really made me realize that, okay, my job is to essentially make the person I'm working for's job easier, and do as much of their work or whatever as I can, and I need to see it through. And so that was very important in terms of understanding the importance of seeing something through. And Jim later became the CFO of Beckman Coulter and ended up hiring me as the controller of Beckman Coulter. And so I had the opportunity to work with him for a while there. And then years later, he was about to roll off of a particular board of directors as the audit committee chair, and referred me to that opportunity. So it's kind of an opportunity that has kept on giving from that standpoint, and someone that I enjoyed working with over the years.
Wow. And what I'm hearing too is not only did he teach you and give you that sort of, through line, but that you heard it. Kind of back to what Richard, you listened and you really internalized it and made it your own. And that became, it sounds like a bit of the secret sauce of Carolyn Beaver, right? Like, this is what makes me an amazing asset, is this ethic and this responsibility and taking it all the way.
Right.
That's quite the legacy, really, that both Susan and Jim have expressed, right? By being now sort of in you. Like, there's pieces of them that are now in you as their legacy. And legacy is the topic of our episode today. So I think that's a great segue to talk about what does that even mean? What does legacy mean to you? When you talk about legacy, what does it mean to you, Carolyn?
Well, so I really think it means to be able to, ultimately leave something to the community that, beyond just leaving whatever, I'll call it, gifts to our children. And that's important too, in terms of helping our children. And well, when I say our children, they're now 20 something and late 20s and early 30s. So, but it's important, ultimately to help them, but it's also important to, beyond just our family, to help the community. And and I think legacy is important to, those who are able to do something more for the community, should do something more for the community. And so my husband and I think that that's very important. And so back in, actually a few years ago now, as we were revising our will, we decided to include working wardrobes as part of that, because we just felt like that was something that was important. And because of my board involvement and just our, I'll call it, alignment with what working wardrobes does, we felt that was important.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for wanting to make sure that what you have also invested in is sustained after your life. I'm curious, that's sort of like to me, when you share that, what I hear is that is a representation of something that is important to you. And you were kind of inferring that it's important to you to invest in the community. I'm curious, Carolyn, what are you hoping the Carolyn Beaver legacy is? Like, what's making you on the inside get represented on the outside by this kind of a commitment?
Well, I think it's, I guess in terms of, if you think about how does one want to be remembered, you want to be remembered as someone who helped make things better in terms of a better place. And hopefully, people would remember kindness, as an example, and just, trying to be helpful and help people.
Well, you're certainly living your life that way. So it's this beautiful parody that your life will be remembered in that way. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Richard, what about you? I mean, kind of what do you mean? What do you think of? What does legacy mean to you? And what are you hopeful that your personal legacy will be?
Yeah, to me, the question is somewhat simple and direct. I think legacy is really how you'll be remembered, or that age-old question I love to pose to people, and that is, when you're at your 90th birthday party surrounded by friends and family and colleagues, how will your friends toast you? What will they say about at that particular time? So I think that is really kind of the definition of it for me. In my sense or my life, as I said a little bit earlier, my purpose is really all about helping more people live what I call these richer lives. I really want to help them live better lives in terms of freedom and prosperity and dignity and peace and pursuit of their own sense of happiness and that kind of thing. So I want to be able to help do that for more people. And that really means, in my world, both the people who need help and are looking for the kind of services and help that Working Wardrobes provide, but it also means for the people who can help make that happen and that they can live better lives at the same time. So I really would like, to be remembered for having made a significant impact and being able to really allow and help more people do that wherever and however they can.
There's something very powerful about that, Richard, which is this cycle, right? It's this cycle of giving and getting. And we know when we give, we get, and we can sometimes be the giver and sometimes the recipient. And that it's just this human experience that we're all sharing, and that we have a kind of like Carolyn was saying, we have different ways of contributing in it. And how beautiful that you want to make sure that not only you're doing it, you're walking that talk, but that you will be remembered by the walk, the talk, and really what I see as modeling. There is this sort of leadership by example that is quite powerful. I think parents often talk about this, right? There's a little bit of a joke, which is like, do what I say, not what I do. But we remember most what we see and what people have done and how they made us feel. And all of these are parts of each of your legacy, these invitations to participate, to be vulnerable with community and say, I have something to offer, please accept it graciously and to give it with such kindness.
Yeah, and people will remember if you're inconsistent. That is, if you say one thing and do another. So it's really important if you're going to talk the talk that you better be able to walk the walk as well. So, I think that's really critical.
Oh, you're so right. You're so right. Well, each of us has made this commitment, right? This we've literally made arrangements that when we die, that some part of our estate will be left to Working Wardrobes. For me, I made this gift. It was really so simple, right? I just literally went online and changed the beneficiary on my life insurance policy. It may have taken me 2 whole minutes, but that 2 whole minutes of exercise for me was a very, internally, it was a really proud moment, because for me, I think my legacy and what I hope to be remembered for is a little bit of what each of you has said, that I want to know that I owned my opportunity and power as a human to use it for good and to bring light into the world in whatever way I could in every interaction. And Working Wardrobes is so all about that. Working Wardrobes is all about how we treat people and ensuring that we kind of come from this baseline that everyone has something to contribute. Let us help you contribute it. So for me, Working Wardrobes, it's so aligned with who I am as a human that making a legacy commitment was just a natural extension of who I am and how I too want to be remembered. I also wanted to make it known for a reason. I wanted to make it known because I want to lead by example, and I want to make sure that in American society, it's not so popular to talk about death or to admit or, really consider our mortality. And I want to lead by example by saying it's okay to acknowledge that, because that's what's beautiful and fragile about this experience. That's why it's a treasure. And also that doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter your socioeconomic status, doesn't matter if you're a parent or not, that these are decisions that we can own our power to make during our lifetime and use that again for good. Sharing a lot there. I'm curious about each of you, and maybe Richard, you could answer first. What inspired you to leave a legacy specifically to Working Wardrobes, and why did you want to make sure it was known?
Well, for me, I think it was a little bit of a personal challenge. I mean, I hadn't really thought about it. I'm so young that leaving a legacy is so far off into the future that it was really hard to even consider such an idea. But we do annual giving. Most of us are helping support the causes we care about and doing that kind of thing on an ongoing basis. And it really was, one of our conversations, Bonnie, where you brought up the notion that you were thinking about this and this was an important area and you were trying to move that needle a little bit. And I thought, that is something that is important and valuable for all organizations for their longevity and future, that type of thing. So why shouldn't we do something there and challenge ourselves to be a little bit more giving than just what we do each year, but actually remember to leave something like that as well. So yes, being able to take that kind of initiative and do something there for me was a little bit of a step toward growing a little bit further in my philanthropy and what I want to do there. But I share with you the sentiment about making it known, for others. And I, in this work all the time with people, and yes, there is a lot of anonymity around giving and so forth, and modesty, and I appreciate that very much and where that comes from. But at the same time, it's my belief that more people ought to be doing this, can be doing this, and would be benefited by being generous and doing this as well. And they are not, because they just don't see enough examples of this, and they don't understand the great benefits that come from generosity and being in that world as well. And so it's really important to show people there are opportunities for them to do this, that it's not hard, as you said, to change a life insurance policy or other ways of making legacy gifts. It's not terribly difficult. But when they believe in something like that, that they should really share what they're doing and be able to let others know that this is something they're doing, they believe in, they think is worthwhile. You might inspire somebody you don't even know to do that and so forth. But the more we can inspire and get other people on board with that effort, the greater we all will be, and the greater legacy and impact we'll be able to have for Working Wardrobes and all organizations where people want to make an impact. So I just think it's really, really important for those that are doing it to be able to share that, not out of a sense of bragging, but out of a sense of this is something that's really beneficial to me, and I think it could be for you. Yeah, why don't you give it a look? So that's my thought about it.
And you, Carolyn?
I agree with Richard. When we first put it in our will in 2018, we didn't tell anyone, and there are a couple of other organizations as well, and we haven't shared those other names. But as part of the board for Working Wardrobes, when we started talking about the importance of the organization, and ultimately it's about sustainability of an organization and trying to make sure that there are resources in the future for the organization. And so we were having that conversation, and then it was pretty easy to say, well, my husband and I did put it in our will, and so to let other people know. And the real purpose of that was to frankly encourage other board members and whoever else that might resonate with, to understand that, yes, as a board member, I'm willing to step up and do that. And it's just something that I believe in. And I think one of the things that we have the advantage of being on the board is that we do hear some of the personal stories about the clients that we help. And I always find those are just so motivating and, to really make you realize how much that particular person benefited by the services that we at Working Wardrobes offer, and the caring of the staff. And that's something that always comes through, is the caring of the staff. And that's so important to our clients. And it's really the philosophy of I'll call it the hand up rather than a hand out. And that's something that my husband and I really like, that philosophy, and in a way to help people. We think that that's really important.
What's beautiful too is that there's the synergy that you're describing that is the same really for you as it is for our clients. And that synergy that I'm seeing is the ripple effects, that you're thinking about the future and you're thinking about, there's one person, I can help change this one life. And when I hear that story about how that one life has changed, I know about that one person, but it's really impossible to measure the countless ripple effects that happen as a result of that one change. So it's, and similarly, obviously, with your leading by example by making a legacy contribution, you may not know the ripple effects of that leadership, but it may very well change more lives and more lives and more lives. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about the future. So let's just take a quick break, this little commercial break, and we'll be right back with Carolyn and Richard in just a moment.
We all know someone who's out of work. Hundreds of thousands are unemployed in Southern California. Working Wardrobes is here to help. At no cost to you, our career coaches will get you job ready. The time is now. Time to update your resume. Time to practice interview skills. Time to get job training, and time to learn new skills. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it can change your life. This is your time. Call Working Wardrobes at 714-210-2460. Speak with a career coach today.
Welcome back. This is Rebuilding Careers, and I am Bonni Pomush here with Carolyn Beaver and Richard Ward. So glad to be in this conversation with you two about legacy and how it is that we add value to our own lives and to the world that we are participating in. As we have talked about already, these are opportunities every day to change lives. And one of the things I would love to sort of explore with you is the future. If you could hop into a time machine for a moment, what do you see as the legacy of Working Wardrobes that we are building together? Carolyn, how do you see this legacy playing out?
So what I see is Working Wardrobes has been a very resilient organization and has been able to pivot between what happened after the fire and with COVID and all of that. The organization has been able to do more online. We didn't used to have so many online classes and things like that. And we've been able to pivot and be able to actually expand our reach. So as you know, we've been focused on Orange County, and that's very important in terms of our community. But now we are actually able to, using those same resources, be able to provide training that has gone across the country in some cases. And so I think that there's an opportunity to reach more people in an efficient manner. And that's great. And that's something that I think is really important. We do services for veterans, and I think that that's very important. That continues to be very important. When I've been able to volunteer at a couple of the events down in Pendleton, it's interesting to talk with people that are looking to, make that transition out of their career in the military, and they really don't have many services, and so that help them make that transition. And so the services that we at Working Wardrobes provide definitely helps them make that transition. And I think that's very important and continues to be very important going forward.
So really expanding the reach, continuing to serve these targeted populations, and especially when you call it the military, I always think about like what an honor it is to be of service to the military who are of service to us. So
right.
Love that too. What about you, Richard? If you hop in that time machine, what do you foresee as the legacy of Working Wardrobes?
Such a good question. And Carolyn put it so well in terms of serving different audiences, and that'll continue to grow, I'm sure, and change as the needs change, they go through. But, I think of working wardrobes as really fulfilling a critical first step in evolution of people's lives. I mean, this is really getting them on the pathway to having that really what I would call a successful life, being able to provide for the families and to teach others about the power of work and so forth to be such a critical element of their individual and family success for many, many years. So I'm just guessing that without knowing where or how that is going to grow. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball for what 20 years will look like and who's going to be the key constituency for the service or help, but I'm sure it'll be there. And I'm sure that working wardrobes will grow into really what I think is going to be the unrivaled and acknowledged leader in providing the critical elements, the service, the education, the training, the help for getting people on the path to success in life. And I just think that that'll inevitably happen, and it'll happen in a much bigger way.
I'm going to need to use that quote, Richard, because that was really phenomenally put. And it's like this legacy is to be kind of like what Carolyn was describing, to be adaptable, to be able to apply these tactics to different industries, different jobs, different situations. And really the support that we receive from individuals and corporations, volunteers, the entire community rallying around this mission says, we know how important it is to empower each other, whether it's by giving or by receiving, and that we can sort of, maybe without a crystal ball, create the future that we seek, which is empowered people able to help themselves and better their life. I love the way you say it, Richard, to live a richer life. So, Carolyn, you mentioned this piece about, working wardrobes had a devastating fire in 2020, and it created a kind of barrier that we help the clients that we serve overcome, right? We had our own barriers to overcome. And I think that the resilience that you were describing is really on the heels of having people like you support working wardrobes. Why do you think, or maybe how do you think that legacy is, I'm going to actually couple this with giving now and giving later, right? Richard, you mentioned this earlier, right? That a legacy gift doesn't change what I'm doing in my life. It's in addition, right? I'm continuing to make a habit of being generous and philanthropic with my time, with my treasure, with my talent, and I'm doing that in my life and after my life. So just curious, kind of coupling these pieces together, how do you see this kind of attitude, if you will, this philanthropic attitude, creating resiliency for the organization? In what way do you think that your giving now and later is really creating a nonprofit that's able to adapt with the times?
I think it's really important, for all nonprofits. I used to have a client, the CFO of that particular nonprofit client, always said, no margin, no mission. And that's true, because even nonprofits ultimately need to have a margin, need to have a base of assets to help them be sustainable. One never wants to be in a position where all of a sudden the revenue doesn't come in and you have to cut program dramatically because you run out of money. So it's really about that sustainability and having the capacity to be resilient and have the time to adjust if things don't work according to plan. And so that is really what I think is important. And when you look at some of the other organizations in the community and how successful they've been over time in terms of attracting, I'll call it capital, because that's ultimately about the legacy giving. It's a form of capital eventually to help the sustainability of the organization. And so that's just something that is in addition to annual giving and things like that that we all do, and that's important. I agree. I mean, that's part of life. And I think just from a philanthropy standpoint, you know, at a pretty young age, I was involved in National Charity League and just, you know, being involved in, you know, doing something for the community, obviously on a personally, you know, very small scale at that point, but just learning and actually as a certified public accountant, that was always something that was just expected, is that you would be involved in the community and that you would be involved in giving some amount. And so that's something that, you know, we've always done as our family, and something that we continue to do. And as an organization, that's really what we need, are, you know, those donors to be resilient.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, it creates the capacity to be responsive in different climates and environments.
Exactly.
The ability to have something fail, right? We can
Right.
try a strategy that fails, and then we have the ability to learn from that mistake and apply it to the next strategy. Anything to add to that, Richard?
Carolyn said it well. You know, as in our personal lives, you know, the more we look ahead and the better we prepare, the better we are able to live out life and thrive in that sense. And I ask people all the time to look 10 or 20 years down the road and to see, you know, what life is going to look like, and you know, prepare for how that will turn out to be something that's really rewarding to them. And working wardrobes will have to be able to do this as well, and look into the future in that sense, and find the challenges that are going to be there and be able to meet them and address them. Obviously, creating the long-term resources that will be key to meeting and being resilient will, of course, help the organization, you know, adapt and evolve and grow into that future in a successful way. So, you know, the more that people include legacy planning and think about these kind of ways to be supportive over the long run and into the future, obviously the more impact, the more working wardrobes will be able to meet its mission and continue to grow and evolve in that sense over the years ahead.
Undoubtedly. I love that, also that parody with like personal life planning and organizational. There's really not much difference, right? It's really about preparing. You do what you can now, obviously, with the capacity you have, but building and creating the future.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm thinking about legacy, and I'm thinking about if you could inspire a younger person that maybe has not had the experience you described, Carolyn, of building this habit of being philanthropic at a younger age, how would you maybe speak to and inspire that in the younger generations?
What I would say is that they should think of themselves as fortunate for whatever they have, and obviously people are at different places, and typically when you're young you don't have as much in terms of resources, but it's about, well, you know, at what level are you comfortable providing some support, and so, you know, when starting out, you know, maybe it's $50 or whatever, and then over time, as they're doing better, more financially able, you know, then that number grows. I mean, that's kind of the way that it worked for us, and so then, you know, can do more. But it's really about what are they passionate about, and doing something that they're passionate about. I think people, you know, need to find what, you know, what resonates with them, and support that.
What beautiful advice. Find your passion and essentially help fund it. And I'm thinking to myself, in the example you were giving, you know, one coffee a month. You could start by just making a monthly contribution of $10 a month to a nonprofit that speaks to your values, and enjoy not having that coffee out, but knowing that it's, in our example, helping someone get out to work.
Yes.
What about you, Richard? What would you say to a young person who hasn't yet made that routine habit of being philanthropic?
Yeah,
You have to practice.
I keep practicing. You know, Carolyn put it well. You know, pursuing a cause with some sense of passion or urgency is really a great way to pursue it and to find the right answers and the opportunities and that kind of thing. I like to help tell people or get them started by teaching them that, you know, to learn a little bit about the power of philanthropy to change lives for the better. I mean, I just think it's an extremely powerful lesson and so forth. And, you know, I try to communicate this as best I can. You know, I try to model that behavior for them. I try to share the experiences that I have and others have, you know, with them where they can see this kind of thing happening. Educate them about the opportunities and the importance and really the great rewards that come from participating in this field. And as Carolyn said, start with $50. You can grow, you know, through time, but just seeing the impact that you have will have such a rewarding result on your own life that you'll make this part of your life and you'll want to continue it for many years. And, you know, this is just so important as we, you know, move on through life and, you know, the next generation comes along, that they see these examples, they learn from it, they understand the power that we can all have by participating this way and leave that legacy, you know, for the next generation. So I think it's an extremely powerful lesson and something that we have to teach and show and model. And, you know, I hope I can do that a little bit over the years ahead.
This is reminding me of this Stephen Covey concept, which is like to begin with the end in mind, right?
Yes.
Like that the fortunate and unfortunate part is that we are all going to end this life experience at some point. And to begin with that in mind is, to your point, Richard, to live a purpose-driven life, to think about how you want it to end and how you want to be remembered. And I feel so close to each of you because of this desire to use our lives with empowerment, right? To be empowered and to own that same power that Jerry rose into heaven. She founded Working Wardrobes, which is, I can make a difference. And each of you and I know that we can make a difference. We can change the world. And we never know all of the ripple effects of those actions, those interactions, those gifts, those moments. But we know that we're owning our power to make that, I don't want to say impression, but to make that difference. I am so grateful to each of you for not only sharing with me and our listeners this information, but your sort of call to action, which is join me in also identifying and leaving your own legacy. If you have not yet made those arrangements, but you're curious about them, I would love to be in conversation with you and any of the members of the Working Wardrobes team, to include, I'm sure, Carolyn and Richard would be happy to talk with you about what that means for them and how they went about it, how you might consider making your legacy gift, in addition to contributing now to the values that speak to your life. So I thank you so very much for joining me today. And I certainly learned something not only about each of you, but how I can continue to live a richer life by empowering other people. And I'm sure our listeners did as well. Thank you, Carolyn and Richard, so very much. This was another episode of Rebuilding Careers. We'll see you next time.